On land, killing was sport, a hunt for trophies, and predators were a threat to man, to be removed. The big game hunter has moved beneath the sea, and the predators that rule here, the sharks, are slaughtered for the same confusion of reasons. Like the hunting animals on land, the shark dares to dispute man's superiority in his territory. And like the predators on land, the shark is suffering the same penalty: destruction. The tiger shark, scavenger and hunter, takes turtles, stingrays, sea lions, and man. This whaler shares the tiger's reputation. Cautious scientists, not inclined to dramatize, classify the whalers as the most deadly of sharks. They're blamed, and on good evidence, for many of the nearly 400 shark attacks in Australian waters. Unchanged for 200 million years, nature is quite satisfied with this streamlined, efficient killing machine. The grey nurse. Despite its reputation, no fatal attack by this species has ever been recorded. Almost a foolish-looking creature, the sleepy wobbegong belies his appearance with a record of attacks on divers. When provoked, he bites and holds. Appearance is certainly no guide. The shovel-nosed shark is not only harmless, he's not even a true shark. Also called the guitar fish, this member of the ray family lives on shellfish. The leopard shark is a leopard only by his spots, a small-mouthed, toothless shellfish eater. In the predatory sense, the sawfish too is harmless. The world of sharks is obviously not entirely populated by savage giants. The ground shark, growing to only 4 feet, is one of many harmless species. But it's the exceptions, the The big sharks, the hunters and killers that capture the headlines and shape our attitudes. The word shark conjures up one picture alone, an image of mauling savagery and murderous attack. On the 12th of March 1961, Adelaide diver Brian Roger became such a headline and survived.
I'd been in the water 4.5 hours when all of a sudden I felt my left leg nearly being torn from me. I swung around to see a 14-foot white pointer shark hanging onto it. It tore me right through here, and then it came up, and as I threw my arm out, and tore me through here. It then went into a tight circle and came charging back at me, and I shot it in the head with a spear gun. And this is the only thing that got rid of it. I was 16 days in hospital, and the doctors did a very good job of patching up my leg. And after 9 weeks, I was very keen to get back into the water again.
Sydney's last 6 shark fatalities occurred in the city's harbour. Modern man has increased the danger of attack. His pollution and scraps of garbage accustomed the sharks to feed on floating objects. A few enclosures are the only safe refuge for swimmers. On surfing beaches in Australia, the presence of sharks is almost casually acknowledged by bathers. The warning alerts surfers. They leave the water and they await the signal that the waves are clear again. On most well-used beaches, the last attack dates back a full generation from the average ages of a clear majority of the bathers. Control measures have further reduced the rare chance of shark attack towards 0 probability. But the drum lines pose a problem. Do the baited hooks attract more sharks than they can catch? There's no question of the efficiency of meshing. Since the first net was laid in Sydney surf in 1937, there's not been a single shark attack fatality off a meshed beach. The nets are lifted every 2 days, the captured sharks and rays removed. The great white shark's fin is severed for 2 good reasons. It's proof of capture for the shark catcher's bonus, and a delicacy in demand in eastern markets. Shark fin soup is a byproduct of safety in the surf. The shark's senses are not attuned to recognize the dangers of the 20-inch mesh. Most sharks are caught at night, but even in bright sunlight, their blankly menacing eyes see shapes and moving outlines only. Against the sun, the net disappears. But shark attacks, in unemotional statistics, were so rare even before the meshing program that the net's prime achievement has been to provide psychological security for bathers. For the wildlife of the sea, the cost of that human peace of mind, stilling the fear stirred up by headlines, has been high. In 10 years of Queensland meshing alone, 20,000 sharks, including unborn young found inside the females, have been destroyed. The nets do not discriminate. In one 4-year period, almost 300 sea turtles died in meshes off the near Brisbane resort beaches, and other officially protected animals, dolphins and dugongs, have blundered into the barriers and drowned. And the net not only sweeps the surf clear of sharks, it gathers up and kills thousands of the sharks' harmless relatives, the rays. Perhaps it's a pity that this undiscriminating destruction by net is the only way we can calm the fears of bathers.
Those shark attacks are a mistake on the shark's part. Now, the kicking legs of a swimmer can emulate a struggling fish, and the shark, swimming in the churned-up surf conditions, hears this noise, races in, bites, and generally lets his victim go when he realises that it's not a fish. But by then the poor victim has probably lost a leg or has died from loss of blood. But at least the victim has one consolation: it was a mistake.
The diver, moving smoothly, is not the floundering target that a splashing swimmer presents to the shark. But spearing fish offsets all advantages when his struggling target alerts the appetite of a distant shark. Often the predators can be discouraged by a sudden movement. But the shark must be very close to be repelled. The impulsive reaction to a close approach has been to kill.
When we designed the 12-gauge shotgun head about 13 years ago, it proved to be a very effective weapon on sharks. And I documented this on film, and this instigated the popular sport of shark hunting. Now, in 1962, when we killed 12 sharks in one morning, and I made a TV special out of it, no one really cared about all the sharks that were killed. In fact, few would today because, well, sharks are supposedly man-eaters. So over these last 13 years, thousands more sharks were lying dead on the bottom because of the shotgun head. And we thought that we were really doing a service to the surfing community. And as well, it was a very challenging and exciting sport.
Shark attacks evoke a horror unequaled by any threat to life on the land. As a result, the shark has been almost universally, sometimes hysterically, feared and hated. It's a public attitude that underwater experts at first accepted and adopted as they hunted and killed beneath the sea.
After the 12-gauge, we designed an even more effective weapon that we could use on a spear gun and therefore kill the much more dangerous and faster whaler sharks and white pointers. Now, this uses a 303 Army issue cartridge, and we have a movable firing pin here so that when the whole lot is screwed up together, all it has to do is hit the shark, and this blasts the charge straight into the shark. And if it's hit anywhere in the head, it will kill it instantaneously.
The shark's body monitors the vibrations from the movements in the sea around him. As planned, the fluttering of the speared fish sends a clear message. It may be heard or felt more than 300 yards away. The human predators are ignored. They take advantage of the shark's acceptance of their presence. The powerhead fails to fire, and instead of immediately killing, becomes a blunt-headed spear that wedges in the shark's gills. Problems with a newly developed technique. The first cartridge was not well waterproofed, but the powerhead was an effective weapon for destruction. The reefs and underwater gutters become a slaughterhouse in the name of sport. The shark was no longer the master. The divers used their new advantage without mercy.
Because of my changing attitude towards conservation, I'm sorry now about all the killing of the sharks. In fact, I feel that even the shark has a right to live.
The shark battles to survive against natural enemies. This cat shark embryo struggles to begin life. He may win and grow, only to be killed by the new predator, man.
Not only the shark has suffered because it's believed to be a dangerous predator of man, other sea creatures, synonymous with the legendary sea monster stories, have been slaughtered without remorse. And these are the giant groper, the manta ray, sea snake, crocodile, and even the killer whale.
For a long time, the inquisitive giant groper was regarded by some as a trophy target, and those frightening tales of his man-eating capabilities helped to justify the kill. Their numbers have been sadly reduced, but today no experienced spear fisherman would boast of killing such a pitifully easy target. The coral bommy, a natural gathering ground for a concentration of fish, supports prolific life. Perhaps technology has made the spear fishermen too efficient, and it's not just the predators who felt the depredations of increasingly improved equipment. But an over-eager spear fisherman can work a limited area until little remains. It's pathetic to see this turrum nudging the mate which a moment ago was swimming alongside it. By returning methodically to one rich site, a thoughtless spear fisherman can soon wipe out the flourishing life of a coral bommy, leaving it a dead and empty place. It's difficult to imagine the motives that led some divers in earlier days to harpoon the magnificent and graceful manta ray. The moray eel, much of his ferocious reputation stems from his appearance, but he snarls only because he breathes through his mouth. And the legendary barracuda, supposedly an undersea wolf hunting in packs, has never made a deliberate and unprovoked attack on man. The sea snake is certainly venomous, certainly inquisitive, and he may be aggressive, particularly during mating. A striking flipper can repel the sea snake's approach. The alternative, an entirely different defense, takes a certain amount of nerve. Sea snake's curiosity does not seem to turn to aggression if the intruding diver remains completely still. Hunting has made the saltwater crocodile an unlikely predator of man. Shooting has both reduced his numbers and taught him timidity, so that he'll now avoid encounters.
He's got it a fine jump from a beautiful young dolphin. Very nicely done, Sinbad. Thank you very much.
Just straight her over. Watch your fin there, it's dragging under.
Ben Cropp has collected live sharks for marine land on the Gold Coast. The shark's public image means that he's a prime attraction. In nature, a shark may gorge and not feed every day. Upset by its capture, this grey nurse will refuse to eat for weeks. To try and ensure this shark's survival, Marineland's Ron Cox tempts the usually voracious eater with morsels of fish. Eva Cropp would not take the risk of holding the dorsal fin of this grey nurse in the open sea. But here in the aquarium, the shark's inhibited feeding pattern makes him slightly more approachable. The killer whale is the true master of the seas, a predator with the physical efficiency of the shark. This marine mammal adds an extraordinary well-developed brain to his arsenal of weapons. It was not until he was studied in captivity that scientists began to discern the gentle side of his character, a cooperative and friendly intelligence that gave the lie to the killer whale's name and ferocious reputation. If this is the killer whale, supposedly the most vicious and deadly mammal in the sea, perhaps we've also been too ready to call the shark nothing but a savage killer and an enemy of man. In the waters of the Barrier Reef, Ben and Eva will find the creatures called dangerous. The sea dwellers placed by common attitudes squarely in the enemy camp. It may be possible to briefly share their domain, the sea, without reducing the relationships to the brutal level of kill or be killed. Sometimes these widespread wing flaps showing above the surface are mistaken for the dorsal fins of two sharks cruising side by side. This mistake of identity should be the only terror the manta ray can cause. Eva rides the soaring magic carpet in the clear water at Lady Musgrove Island on the southern end of the Barrier Reef. Their elegant Spanish name, manta, translates simply as blanket. Eva freedives to 40 feet with the giant companions of man in an underwater world where, all too often, man has regarded anything large as an enemy. Further north, past Heron Island towards Swain's Reefs, the sharks, the sea snakes, and the moray eels rule. In these more remote waters of the reef, man has had less impact on the natural order of predator and prey in the undersea world. It's a coral kingdom where man has intruded cautiously, almost always armed. But on this occasion, the divers will come carrying gifts and not guns. The offering of food is for the moray eel, hidden in his lair in the coral. The moray eel eases out of the crevice, his features twisted in that apparently threatening snarl. His mouth contorts as he pumps water through his throat and out an opening behind his head. Eva watchfully ensures that her fingers do not become part of the diet of the rapidly darting moray. The gluttonous reef fish are less polite, taking advantage of her concentration on the moray to steal from the bag of food. Fortunately, the moray is more patient and precise with his feeding. While the moray eel has given the lie to his unpleasant reputation by his cooperative behavior, one reef fish tarnishes the good name of his species by biting Eva on the finger. More for reasons of safety than because of concern for good table manners, this giant snack is served up on a fork. But this 6-foot moray eel is not much interested in picking at his food piece by piece. He knows where the meal is coming from and moves out to take the whole banquet. This dispute over food could provoke an aggressive predator to attack. But the moray eel accepts his loss in the tug-of-war. Though he was not exactly friendly, he proved not to be the savage monster of popular description. Today, the feared creatures of the reef have been particularly cooperative. The search for marine predators takes us to Queensland's far north. It's almost impossible to find the Australian saltwater crocodile on the edge of the sea, since shooting has depleted his numbers. Here in mangrove creeks, the remaining timid crocodiles are difficult to observe. A fleeting glimpse as a pair of eyes sinks cautiously below the surface, and the crocodile is gone. On an earlier expedition, Ben filmed their behavior and took this first underwater sequence of a saltwater crocodile. Mutual apprehension made the close encounter a brief one. At Hartley's Creek in Queensland's far north, Gary Zilfleisch shows that the crocodile is not an animal to be taken casually. Animals of this size are often sluggish in their movements. Not so the saltwater croc. He can show a surprising turn of speed on land, and his jaws strike at food with lightning reflexes. Like all these predators, the crocodile is not a man-eater by nature or inclination. He's a hunter, and his size and skill demand that he be treated with caution and respect. Those who dispute his food and territory meet violent and immediate retribution. Cook Island, off the southern end of the Gold Coast. It's the diver's version of rough riding, although the plainly bewildered loggerhead turtle is no bucking bronco. The large shovel-nosed shark is harmless, but too wary and too powerful to take Eva for an underwater ride. The sleeping leopard, though, is the perfect steed. Dozing on the bottom, he's startled into a slow canter by the rider. From Christmas until Easter, the leopard sharks congregate around this rocky island in what appears to be an annual breeding migration. For a few moments, the leopard seems simply stunned with amazement. But the enormity of what is happening to him slowly dawns on his dozing brain, and he takes off at full gallop. Unlike fish, which are equipped with air bladders, free-swimming sharks must move constantly or they'll sink to the bottom and drown. But Ben has discovered that this shark, the grey nurse, has the unique ability to hover motionless by generating gases in its body to adjust buoyancy. At nightfall, the divers decide to mount a dangerous experiment with the grey nurse school they've just sighted.
And the larger fish here. I'll get some of these. They might attract some of the sharks in there. Yuck. Let's have something around.
I'm glad you're going to be. Yeah.
The obstinate wobbegong is the first shark to seek out the light. A cruising grey nurse follows. The wobbegong is a most unwelcome addition to the tests. Of all sharks, he's the most difficult to discourage, and a kick may cause him to bite. The offered fish is on a 4-foot spear. The grey nurse sharks must be drawn in this close to the divers to be within range of the light for filming. A sudden movement of the speared fish briefly startles the grey nurse. Again, the wobbegong moves in at ankle level, diverting the diver's concentration from the greater danger above. The night dive has been a calculated risk. darkness and the stimulation of food add to the uncertainty. Encouraged by the success of the first part of the experiment, they decide, perhaps rashly, to take down a larger offering. It may provoke a feeding frenzy.
Oh, spooky. Quite a few sharks. You better stick a bit closer. Here, they're feeding. Pass it to David.
Oh, I'm glad you're down there.
Thank you. I think, David, hey, David, I reckon the worst is when you're coming up. You know, when you can't see them anymore. Okay.
You got it?
Okay. Uh-huh.
The more dangerous whalers have joined the feeding school. Three feet away, a grey nurse opens his gaping jaws to tear the fish apart. And at that precise instant, the underwater world collapses into total blackness. The lamp has blown, leaving nothing but an after image of those open jaws frozen on the diver's eyes. Despite the diver's experience, their response is near panic.
Who turned out the light?
What happened?
Oh, the lamp blew. Oh, jeez. Hey, let me up too. Blue. I tell you, I wasn't scared before, but I was there.
What about the shark?
The experiment, despite its sudden ending, was dramatic evidence that under the worst of conditions, it is possible to sit at the dinner table with sharks and not end up on the plate.
Just when the shark took the fish. We didn't know what he was doing. We didn't know where he was.
What could be more practical for someone who spends most of his life under the sea than an underwater supply of scotch? Just 300 yards off the Gold Coast, the shovel-nosed sharks mount guard over the whiskey wreck, the Cambus Wallace. In 1894, the four-masted iron bark went down, carrying a huge load of Scotland's finest. The cargo, or some of it, is still there, still sealed in the bottle. But now it's locked into the ocean floor by the incrustations of 80 years. A few minutes of kicking with the flippers sweeps away the top layer of sand, uncovering Ben's underwater cellar. Judging by the contents of the cargo hauled up to the surface, the colonists last century had a taste for pickled walnuts washed down with whiskey and soda.
The drunken bottle.
Yeah, that's a funny looking shape.
It's called a Hamilton bottle.
What part of the wreck were you in?
Oh, the front end.
Yeah. I was on the other end. I think there's a case.
After 80 years below, the whiskey's taste may be decidedly fishy. Aboard Ben's boat, Beaver, the planned tasting of the vintage is interrupted by the broadcast of the Gold Coast Shark Patrol plane.
Very good morning from the Skywatch aircraft. We've presently been circling a very large whale shark, just been sighted off Main Beach, and we've been doing several orbits down there. This very large fish looks most spectacular from up here. The rest of the coast seems to be quite free of marine life, but this large fish is right off Main Beach, around about 200 yards out, swimming northbound. And it's accompanied by around about half a dozen smaller sharks, we think they are. We're having a look at them now, and it looks really great from up here. The water's crystal clear, and we'll keep you advised as to its movements later on the day. This has been Royce Lanham of the 4GG Skywatch for Lanham's Joy Flights.
VJ4RE, this is Beaver. VJ4RE, this is Beaver.
VJ4RE, Coast Guard Station, Surface Paradise, back to Beaver. Roger, go ahead.
VJ4RE, Roger, Reg. We're directly off marine land and we're proceeding right now down in front of surface for the whale shark. Beaver standing by.
VJ4 back to Beaver. Roger, Roger. VJ4RE standing by.
The ocean current has swept long streaks of plankton in towards the Gold Coast beaches. This is the giant shark's microscopic diet, and he's followed his food close inshore. Lanham's aerial report is relayed to the beach through the local radio. Immediately, the shark alarm is sounded. Although the huge whale shark is no enemy of man, the alarm is given whenever any shark is sighted. But the lifesaver seems to find it difficult to convince the bathers. This whale shark's bulk is enormous. He's between 25 and 30 feet long. There have been only a dozen or so human encounters with this rare whale shark throughout the world. The whale shark plows straight into the boat obstructing its path, a cue for the divers to join the world's largest shark in this ultimate underwater experience. The whale shark's bulk attracts an escort of lesser fish. A school of 50-pound black kingfish, their outlines remarkably like small sharks, swim in his shadow. They may use him as cover for their hunting or coast across the ocean on his bow wave. A whale shark 59 feet long, weighing 90,000 pounds, was caught in the Gulf of Siam early this century. Thankfully, he's harmless, like the manta ray, a plankton eater. In a constant cycle, the 5-foot mouth rises to the surface and, like a living dredge, takes in water and pumps and filters out the plankton from the sea. This prehistoric shark delivers its young in dinosaur-size eggs, the largest in the world. Sign of agitation as David Krassoff steers him through the sea, his hands feeling the rush of water entering that gaping mouth. Guiding that mammoth of the sea through his element, David, who's an airline pilot, likens the huge fish's responsiveness to the soaring mechanical giants of the air that his hands are more accustomed to controlling. The Currumbin rescue boat cuts through the surf to assist the group of divers. The party has drifted some distance from Ben's boat as they followed the constantly moving whale shark. His steady speed of 2 or 3 knots is hard for a human to maintain. From the air, the circling shark plane has spotted a second huge shape in the clear water. He may be even larger than the 10-ton giant that the divers have just farewelled.
Skywatch aircraft just completed a run of the Gold Coast beaches, and now we're still circling a very large whale shark. It's moved down to surface paradise at the moment, around about 200 yards out, swimming southbound, and it looks really spectacular from up here. We've got quite a few people out of the water now, and Ben Cropp is down here attempting to ride this whale shark. It's a very big fellow indeed, but apparently the whale shark is harmless. And quite a bit of activity. The Yassi rescue boat is down here also, but we'll keep you advised during the afternoon as to its movements of this whale shark.
The second whale shark is larger and has a deformed left pectoral fin. By now, the divers are accustomed to the shark, not afraid, but exhilarated by his presence beside them in the water. There's no disputing that the world beneath the sea contains creatures that can pose a threat to man. But there are no vicious monsters here, and there's no malice in their killing. Even the most efficient of nature's predators are intent only on their own survival. Some sharks, a small minority of that ancient and highly successful group, may kill man. They must be treated with respect and caution, controlled where necessary. The world's greatest predator is man. For sport, out of bravado, less often for food or self-protection, he hunts and kills. In man's newfound hunting grounds beneath the sea, an animal's great size or apparently fearsome appearance have given an excuse for slaughter. The fate of land predators is a lesson man has so far failed to apply beneath the sea.
I don't know, the last time I saw him, his feet were sticking out of his mouth.
Tell you what, I don't like that mouth.
Now, that's the trouble. He's got a big enough mouth. He wouldn't swallow you, but he just wouldn't like to slip inside. Well, Bob was looking in its mouth. I think he was looking for some fish.
He was counting his teeth.
How long would you say it would be, Ben?
About 25. Second one was about...
Looks a lot bigger in the water.
Yeah, so do you.
Okay, how about some whiskey?
If it's drinkable.
Cork's broken.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's fallen in.
Oh, the smell.
Oh, it's all right.
It's on the nose.
Oh, that's all right. All right.
Boy, it's foul.
What do you expect for a 100-year-old whiskey?
You can have the rest of it.
Oh. All right.
That's really rough.